Hey everybody, welcome to BrickVault. Today, the mock of the week that we are showing off in the studio is the Colonial Raptor. This is from Battlestar Galactica, and it is the third ship to come from David Duperron that kind of completes the magical trio of, I think, certainly the most popular and coolest ships from this series, that being the Viper, the Cylon Raider, and now the Raptor. David has included all the signature steps of his build style, which is to make the model very large and extremely detailed, while still also being quite solid, so this behemoth of a build is not too difficult to move around. In terms of the colonial forces, the Raptor is kind of the unsung hero of the fleet. It doesn't have the sleek look of the Viper nor the speed, yet remains quite rugged and strong. It has earned the nickname Flying Pillbox amongst the pilots, and absolutely refuses to be decommissioned because of its versatility and reliability. There's a lot more details about this vehicle that I want to get into in this episode, but first let me just say, if you want to build this massive Lego model, you can find the instructions at our web store, that is www.brickvault.toys. With each purchase comes the PDF step-by-step building instructions, as well as a digital parts list for ordering all the pieces you're going to need online, and there are two variants of the ship. You can get the Raptor in its regular version, or the reconnaissance version, I would say, and there's also all the weapon attachments if you want to make it into the Assault Raptor. Buying instructions from us is a great way to help support the channel, as well as the amazing designers that we work with, like David here. And now let's get into the Raptor itself. Maybe the first thing you've noticed is that the ship is not built in the general color that you usually see it in. It's got this kind of bronze or dark tan feel to it in the show. The Raptor at this scale, built in tan or dark tan as the primary color, is insanely expensive and somewhat impossible, or at least you'd have to change certain parts out because of just the shapes that are required to make the ship look the way it does at this size. David opted to build the Raptor with the primary color as the dark bluish gray, with just a little bit of the dark tan highlights, or accents really, here and there, and that's what makes this ship actually possible to build in real life. Tan or dark tan as a primary just wasn't really an option. Though some have tried it, it's just a much more expensive build. Like in the show, the Raptor has a cockpit, and that's actually a separate area of the ship than the aft compartment in the back, where the ECO, or Electronic Countermeasures Officer, sits and helps with either reconnaissance or jamming missiles or doing all kinds of other tasks. And here you can see David has built a door that opens up, the hatch that opens up on the side, which allows you to get inside this electronics compartment. It's absolutely awesome on the inside. If you're familiar with any of his other models, you'll know that he's very good with interiors. There's even a highly detailed seat that swivels, and I think that radar dish detailing is probably my favorite bit out of all the things you can see up and down the walls. Those piston type pieces that are used to keep that hatch open have just enough friction so you can just lift the door up and it stays there, and close it back down without any hitches. I like that function a lot. There's nothing that needs to snap open or stick in place to keep that door from falling down. And now let's just check out some of the other external details on the ship, starting in the front, and we'll slowly move our way back. The nose is already a pretty complex combination of wedge plates as well as curved slope pieces to make that sort of rounded over shape in the front, and there's all kinds of sensors there. The windscreen too is a really interesting and odd shape to try to create in Lego, and basically he has layered a couple of different types of trans-clear windscreens on top of each other to get that bulge out in the front, and surprisingly that shape actually looks almost perfect compared to what you see for the Raptor in the TV show. Moving our way a little bit further back towards the wing, the front of the wing of the Raptor is always, I don't know how to describe it, but it's got that big bulge on it. It's almost like a large shoulder, but it's certainly one of the more bulky and or less aerodynamic features of of the whole ship, and I'd say it's probably one of the more defining features of this model that kind of gives it that beefy look all around. On the top, we have one of those larger circular sensors. I don't remember the exact function of this device here. I think it's part of their electronic defenses, so it cannot get taken over by the Cylon viruses. Anyways, the detailing for it's pretty simple. The look is certainly achieved well to get that dish on the top. Somebody let me know exactly what that is for. And now let's move on to the back, where I think we've got some of my personal favorite features. These are the two fixed sublight engines, and they're not only juxtaposed nicely against this particular model because they're built in the dark tan, but they're also, I think, just great builds for engines in general. If you look at the very back, you can actually see that a wheel piece has been used to outline the circular shape of the thrusters, and then the slope bricks have been built around it. Usually when you see an engine, they do just the wheel detailing, or they have kind of a round slope shape. David has opted to include both of them, which I think is a great way to really solidify that shape. And then moving all along the sides of these thrusters, you can see detailing up and down the whole build. This really drives home the fact that this is more of a reconnaissance ship. It's big, it can take some shots, and it doesn't really dogfight, but it certainly can get out of a sticky situation if it really needs to turn the heat up. You can see some intakes attached to the outsides of the Raptors here. They're very angular. This was also a shape that I was surprised David got so well, because it really is kind of an awkward thing to build in Lego. Not only do these fins stick out at an angle themselves, but the intakes have a way of kind of melting into the back of the frame too. Surprisingly, they're not weak. This was definitely the first thing I tested out when playing around with the stability of the model. And speaking of which, I might as well pick this thing up for you guys and let you know what it looks like moving it around. Right off the bat, you can lift it up pretty easily. Pretty much all of the bottom of the ship is a solid block, so you don't have to worry about breaking little bits of the paneling off. Every individual chunk of the model can stick on pretty darn well. Not too many of the pieces of this ship feel particularly loose. The two angled wedge plates I'm thinking of have a little bit of looseness to them. They're connected well, but they're attached with these pin pieces right by the nose of the ship, so they feel loose, but they don't actually pop off. And then on top of that, yeah, you can basically just grab and shake any individual piece of the model. Now you can lift up the whole thing. It is a heavy ship. I mean, just look at the size of this thing. It's a couple thousand bricks, so that should always be kept in mind when moving this model around. It's like, sure, technically it's swooshable. It certainly is something you can pick up and move around, but based on the size and shape of this thing, it's not something that you are going to be wanting to swoosh around. Now let's look at the bottom of this ship. I do like that you can just hold it by the very top, and you can hold it upside down like this, which is nice. You'll also notice that I've added an extra little foot into the back of the Raptor. This is yet again another model that has been designed solely digitally, or mostly digitally, in not so much in real life, which means when a physical version of this model exists, lo and behold, the giant thrusters in the back that are suspended without any support are obviously going to fall backwards. So I've added an extra little foot. You'll also notice David has included tons of detailing on the bottom. He does not neglect the bottom of models ever. You can see when I put the model back down, that front foot came off on accident. I must have knocked it at some point when moving the whole thing around, but even then, picking the model back up and reattaching that piece is no problem. Set the model back down. I accidentally knocked one of those fins in the back against my arm. Guess what? They're brick stacked. They're only one brick thick. So yeah, that fell off, but you can put it back together also very quickly and easily. There's no point in hiding little things that break off of the model. You guys, if you build it yourselves, you'll know where the weak points are. And the more we build with these large, especially the large models, what we really try to make out to look for are certain weaknesses that will pop off sort of unexpectedly. We don't want this model to have weak points that we think people aren't going to be able to handle properly. And if things do break off, we don't want the rebuilds to be incredibly difficult to do. And in this case, any of the little things that pop out can be popped right back in without too much hassle. By the way, this is just what the landing gear look like from a lower perspective. They're kind of funny. They almost remind me of bird legs or something like that. Very, very strong. And now it's time to show off the model with all the weapons attached to the outside. This is the Assault Raptor, at least that's what it's called called when they decide to equip it for what looks like a pretty large engagement. This guy's got all of the goodies attached. Most notable feature here are the rocket pods that come on the outside. They stick on quite well, and I also want to point out that you can still open up the side features. You can still open up the side door of the Raptor with the one pod just bending to go up along with the door without any hitches. So that's really, really nice that that function doesn't get hindered by adding these armaments. And now let's take some clean sweeps along the bottom so you can get an idea of what the rest of those weapons look like. We've got the miniguns on the outside, or just the rapid fire guns on the outside. Some larger missiles. There's also rocket pods. And then those larger drums on the bottom, they could be the nuclear missiles. Honestly, I don't actually know. I do remember them being attached to the outside. Somebody let me know what those light gray pods represent. And anyways, this is by far the coolest version of the model is the assault version. It feels very kind of 90s. I don't know how to describe it with those large missile pods. It kind of reminds me of an early mech warrior style ship, and just armed to the teeth. Completely exposed weapons is something that you don't get so much from modern day science fiction ships. At least something that I haven't seen quite as explicit as the Raptor here. Also, I think it's worth pointing out this is sort of, do it at your own risk, but when you do have all of the weapons attached to this model, the weight actually distributes a little bit more towards the front, though it can easily lean back if you're not careful. Personally, I still prefer to have just a little bit of something keeping the back tail up, but if you feel like being a risk taker, you can take it out, and all of these extra weapons and armaments on the front of the ship will actually keep it standing up against those big thrusters in the back. Anyways, this ship really does round off the Battlestar Galactica collection quite well. Remember guys, if you do want to build the Raptor yourselves or any of these other ships that we've shown off, the building instructions are in the web store. That's www.brickvault.toys. It's linked in the description below. Let me know what types of things you want to see us build in the future. These are by far the most fun videos to put together. And if you enjoy our content, you can always like or subscribe. And we'll see you next time at BrickVault.